All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to Communitech's Women in Tech Power panel. It's great to have you all here tonight. My name is Olivia Miles. I'm a student at Wilfrid Laurier University.
My name is Margaret Tavares, and I'm a student from Conestoga College.
And my name is Rachel Hickey. I'm a student from the University of Waterloo.
And we're all campus ambassadors here at Communitech. With International Women's Day happening this Friday and all the activities taking place throughout the week, we thought it was really important to have a conversation about the barriers that exist for women in tech and also give students the opportunity to explore the hub and learn from these influential women.
We are so happy to see such an incredible turnout tonight, so thank you for coming. I also want to say a big thank you to these women who volunteer their time to come share their knowledge with us tonight, so thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll all leave here feeling inspired and excited about our future opportunities.
Absolutely, and it's also super great to see so many different students from different schools and also so many community members here tonight. Let's just do a quick roll call. Is anybody here from the University of Waterloo? Give me a cheer. I'm from Waterloo, so exciting. Anyone here from Laurier? Hey, Laurier, nice to see you. Anyone here from Conestoga? Hey, very nice. And anyone here from out of town today? Cool, we're super local, we love it. And we're so excited to have you guys here. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Jenna Aquino up. She's Communitech's Campus Engagement Co-op, and she's gonna be running the panel tonight. So let's invite Jenna up to the stage.
Okay, hi everyone. So thanks again so much for coming out tonight and to our panelists for volunteering your time. We're very excited to hear what you have to say, so I won't bore you with any other details. I think we should let our panelists introduce themselves. So maybe just to start off, state your name, your job title, the company you work for, and just a little tidbit about what it is you do in your role and at your company. Just share the mic and pass it down.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm the Director of Product Design and Marketing at Kik. In my role, I work with a team of product managers and designers to figure out, what is the strategy for what we're building, what is the best way for us to get there, and then ultimately executing on that vision.
My name is Arjumand, Ateeq, and I've recently founded a company called Baysil, so I'm the CEO of the company. We're about 5. We're a health tech company, and I do everything from doing what a CEO does to what a janitor does, really, at the company.
I totally hear the janitor thing for sure. My name is Andrea Kerswill. I am the head of Scotiabank FactoryU, which is a brand new research and experiment center for the bank. We're actually located about a 5-minute walk from the University of Waterloo campus. So my role there is everything from strategy of how we tie the innovative products that we make back to the organization to getting garbage cans. So we have garbage cans in our space.
My name is Caitlin McGregor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plum. We measure the soft skills that everyone has, like innovation and adaptation and communication, and make sure that people get selected for jobs based on their potential, not their resumes, and that when they're in an organization, they continue to grow and learn by moving around into jobs that maybe they haven't done before, but they have the potential to excel in.
Hi everyone, my name is Akailah. I actually went to the University of Waterloo, so shout out to everyone who's here from UW. I work at Google. I am the university program specialist there, so basically what that means is I go on campus and talk to really amazing students about our internship and full-time opportunities.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellen Stafford. I'm a senior manager of business development at Vidyard. Vidyard is a video platform for business, so you can think of it as YouTube for business. We can tell companies who's watching their videos how long so they can make business decisions with that information. In my role, I manage a team of business development reps who are responsible for generating interest in Vidyard. So they're emailing, cold calling, using video to prospect, open the door, open conversations in businesses to hopefully drive them to be Vidyard customers.
Hey guys, I'm Saheba. I'm in sales over at Shopify Plus. So really I work with anywhere between new business inbound leads and cold prospecting leads to bring their e-commerce platforms over to Shopify Plus so they can grow and build for the long term.
Awesome, thank you. So maybe we could hear from each of you a little bit about what experiences led you into the tech industry. Was it something that you always knew you would get into, or did something just kind of happen along the way that led you to it?
guess I'll start.
Sure.
So tech really for me kind of happened by default. Just to preface what I'm saying a bit, I went to Laurier. And throughout university, I was involved with a lot of extracurriculars, really focusing in on the tech community. So one of the clubs I was a part of was called Startup Laurier. And that played a really big impact in my university career. I started out in business, switched over to political science. I just like the courses a lot better, but being involved with the tech community in KW throughout all 4 years really remained as a constant. And at the end of university, I was one of the co-presidents for Startup Laurier. And with that, I got to work firsthand with a lot of tech incubators like Communitech, Accelerator Center to create long-term programs for students from a developmental standpoint, so that they can be exposed to all the opportunities really available in the area. Because obviously, as you guys know, KW is really the Silicon Valley of Canada, and from that, kind of just found my way in tech by working with small growth businesses. My last job was in Toronto. I was doing inbound and outbound BDR, and found my way over at Shopify Plus, and here we are.
So I did not know I wanted to be in tech. I actually have a degree in fine arts from the University of Guelph, so not really related at all. Some ways let me to think creatively and communicate, and I use that in my interviews to get the job. But I actually, after university, I got a job in sales because I needed to pay off my student debt, and I really liked it. And then it was actually through my network from university that I ended up in tech. I had a friend who was working for a tech company based out of San Francisco in their Toronto office called Salesforce, sorry. And he had reached out to me knowing I had sales experience and wanted to make some referral money, so it got me to take an interview, and that's sort of how it began. And then I actually moved out to Kitchener through someone else who was in my network and who knew about Vidyard, taught me all about the tech scene that was here, and I had to come out and see it and interview for some jobs. So it sort of did happen organically by leveraging my network and saying yes to different types of opportunities that came my way.
So yeah, same kind of thing for me. I had no idea I was gonna end up in the tech sector, much less at Google. Like, it wasn't on my radar. But I think having the co-op experience from UW definitely helped me to kind of learn what I didn't like to do, not really what I liked to do at the time. But I think there's probably a lot of you in the audience who are in university or college and still might not know what you want to do. I just want to say, like, that's fine. I didn't really know what I wanted to do either, but I think just putting yourself out there to all the opportunities that could be available is super important, not closing yourself off. I think just always being open for different paths and venues is really important, and that's kind of what I did. I had a job at a university and wasn't too happy there, kind of just went back to a job I had already been at previously for co-op, and then started to look around and happened upon Google. I had no idea that they were in Kitchener-Waterloo, and I was like, might as well interview, see how it goes. I already have a job, so if I don't get it, it's not that big of a deal, and tried not to set my hopes up too much along the way, but the more I got through the process, the more I wanted the job, and it's been about like 2.5 years since I've been there, so all that to be said, just kind of keep your options open and see where things kind of net out for you. If you have an end goal, your journey is not always going to be linear to getting there. It could kind of be all over the place, and that is totally fine too.
So same story. I had no idea that I was going to end up in tech. I had no idea that I was an entrepreneur. So I built 2 businesses for other people before I started my own business. And that first opportunity really came from doing an informational interview. So I went to the University of Guelph. My undergrad is in international development. I had moved to Toronto, and I wanted to interview somebody that was doing a job that I thought I would want to have one day. It's called an informational interview. Google it. It was the best piece of advice I ever got. And I basically, through the interview, they learned about me and said, hey, they were starting a social enterprise from the ground up, and would I interview to be employee number 1? And by being first in, my boss handled the finance and sales, and I got to build an entire social enterprise apparel business from the ground up. And I knew nothing, and I mean nothing, about the business that I built. and I learned it all doing it. And then I realized I was an entrepreneur. I realized that my strength was building stuff from nothing. I looked back and saw, okay, well, I had a history of seeing a problem and building a club or a group or something to fill that need, but I just never thought I was an entrepreneur until I was actually doing it. And then after I built 2 businesses for other people, I said, well, I can do this for myself. And it's been 7 years, and we're 22 people, and we've got big name brand partnerships. And so really, when I was in your seat, I had no idea I'd end up here. So it is possible, and a lot of the times it just, it helps getting involved. So Communitech, I moved here in 2013 to be part of their accelerator program with my business that was a year old. And it was through the network and through the support, joining the Accelerator Center, that I kind of filled in the gaps along the way and got the support and hired a team that could do things that I can't.
So I'm going to go with a theme here. Definitely had no idea I would end up in tech. So I actually have an English Lit degree from UW. But what I love about that university is that it's so diverse and there's so many different opportunities. And so I actually got into the financial services industry rather by accident. If anyone here knows Imprint at the University of Waterloo, it's a student paper. I was very involved there. I wrote columns, I edited, I did layout, I did all that fun stuff. And that's sort of where I got a lot of my job skill. And so I started working in financial services as an editor and sort of worked my way up the chain in investment banking to be a research distribution and managing editor for TD as well as BMO. And then I realized that I was very specialized and I wanted to be more of a generalist. That was probably one of the best pieces of advice I'd gotten in my career, was to actually expand my horizons a bit more and see where I could go with it. So I came over to Scotia and actually completely came in a strategy role to see what I could do, and ended up working for the executive vice president of retail products. And what that means is essentially your everyday savings, checkings accounts, all your unsecured lending, your credit cards, and sort of learn the business from the ground up, understood how the business makes money, how the business loses money, though I know it always seems like banks make money, we do lose money. And then from there, actually built the business case for Scotiabank FactoryU. So because I'm from the area, and I have a lot of friends here and a lot of family here, I was always very connected to this place, and realized that Scotiabank as an organization was really missing out on an opportunity to be a part of this incredible tech-rich community. And so came out here to do that, and very similar to you, really had, and still have really, no idea what I'm doing, but I'm learning as I go. And so I think, similar to what I've heard in the panel so far, I think the biggest thing is to take risks. When I built the business case for FactoryU, I actually had no intention of it being my job. I was like, okay, here you go, have fun, someone else can do this. Then they kind of pushed it back at me and said, how about you do it? And I was like, are you nuts? And here I am. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
So I actually didn't grow up here in Canada. I grew up in Dubai, and I had my career sort of laid out, or plan laid out, as going into medicine. But it was just one of those things where it was a really, really long road in terms of finances. And so I couldn't really afford that. So somebody very randomly told me when I was 17 that, hey, there's this tech stuff that's going on, that's coming up on the scene. It seems like it would be interesting. And I said, okay, well, it's going to be a 4-year degree, so I think that would make sense. So I actually didn't have my first computer until I was 18. I didn't know the first programming language that I sort of did at college was GBasic, and that was at college. But it was just really, like, I liked it, and it's really interesting. So I came here, I went to Laurier, I did computer science, computer electronics. For a decade, I built a career going all the way from a junior software engineer to all the way to a principal software engineer. I loved it. I love software engineering. I love the power of automation. I started going out in the community and didn't think ever that I would ever be an entrepreneur. But I started learning all these really cool ideas from all these different meetups, and I was trying to bring them back into a large company, and that wasn't sitting well with a lot of people who in large enterprises don't like a lot of change. Also, I started to see that I'm more of a big vision person. I like connecting different ideas. Again, not a very good fit for a large company. So I said, you know what, I want to try and do sort of my own thing. it's been really, really scary. But the thing is, so now I'm doing health tech, med tech. So it's kind of come all the way full circle. I didn't plan for it to be that way. I've just taken, my two loves, something that I wanted to do, which is medicine, and then something that I really know a lot about and love, which is software engineering, and put that together into really making an impact and solving a problem that I really saw. So I think what I can tell you from that is that, sometimes you can plan, but things don't work out that way. But if you're looking for opportunities and if you're really learning from every opportunity, you will see that somewhere the dots will connect, right? And you have to have that faith in yourself that they will. And that's pretty much how it is. I'm loving what I do right now. Thank you.
So for me, I wouldn't say that I knew it would be tech necessarily, but I very much wanted to be involved in creating things. I always loved kind of making and just being involved. And I also really love problem solving. So understanding how things work, understanding where they can go and the potential of a system is something that I just really was passionate about. So for me, I started at UW. I had a couple co-op terms, kind of similar to another panelist. I found some things that I didn't like so much and used those. I started off in aerospace, then I did a term at a particle accelerator, and then I decided to make the switch into software. So it was a little bit all over the place. When I applied to that job, I still to this day have no idea how I got it, but it was a great kind of launching point for me. And then from there, it was putting out my hand, asking questions, diving in, taking risks, trying my best to be brave, and and then landed me here.
Awesome. So now that we all have an idea of what each of your background is, for those of you who'd like to comment on this question, please just raise your hand, feel free. But I think we'd all like to talk about what barriers and obstacles exist specifically for women that maybe you've experienced, maybe you've witnessed in the tech industry today, and what would you want young students to know going into it?
I think this can affect both genders, of course, but the idea of imposter syndrome, I think a lot of it is just self-doubt, though. When I run into things where I run into my barriers, it's usually what I'm saying to myself versus like other people holding me back. So I think getting through that over time, like maybe not applying for a job because I didn't think I was ready to apply for that job, or even speaking on panels like this, in the past I might have said, hey, there's someone else that's better suited for that because maybe I don't think I have a lot to give. But the more I say yes to these types of opportunities, the more I push myself to continue to say yes and continue to take different types of experiences. So I know that being a manager of females and males today, that it tends to be my female reps that experience this the most, but not exclusively, of course.
Sure. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I think another thing is just people having a certain idea about what's available to them. So I totally agree. It's like putting yourself out there and taking chances, but also understanding that like technology is a space for a variety of opportunities. There's lots of different directions and specialties that are needed in the industry. So to not keep your mindset on, oh, technology is this one thing, and if I am not this one thing, it's not for me, because it really is broad. There's lots of opportunity within it.
Awesome. There's definitely a lot to say on that topic, but maybe we could even just talk a little bit more about this idea of informational interviews, putting yourself out there, raising your hand for things yourself because no one else will. Can anyone comment on what advice you would give to students who are looking to do that but maybe have no idea where to start, who to reach out to, and kind of how to present themselves?
Sure. So I would say a big part of this is exactly what you're doing here tonight, which is network building. That's really important. Build your network, leverage your network. With a community like Waterloo, it is all about getting to know people and getting people to introduce you to those whom they know, right? So I know if you're in school, it's also about leveraging the opportunities within your school. For me, it seems like forever ago, but I learned so much and was able to get so much opportunity by actually understanding the things that were available to me, things like Imprint, things like volunteering for various organizations. And those relationships are so important to me even today. So I would say just leveraging what's around you and putting yourself out there as much as you can. So the first step is doing things like this. And I would say the next step is following up on that. Don't be afraid to ask people for their information, to ask them for coffee, to get to know them. You never know what you're going to fall into if you do that.
There are a lot of different opportunities to kind of get in as somebody who's new to the sector or growing reputation here. So there are hackathons all the time over here in this region. I just spoke to 1,000 students in Waterloo from all the different schools, some high schools, some university. 500 of the 1,000 were women, and it was meant for people's first hackathons. And so that's a great opportunity to kind of get your feet wet. Conestoga College just 3 weeks ago I spoke, and they had an event for people to kind of encourage them to move into tech. There are tech meetups every single month. You don't have to be in tech to go to those. You can just be like, hey, I'm here because I'm interested in the sector. You can start going on to Communitech has a job board. They keep changing. I can remember what the name is.
Workintech.ca.
Work in Tech used to be called something else. So Work in Tech, and you can look at the cool companies and look at what jobs they're posting, and you'll see jobs like customer success manager, and you'll probably be like, I have no idea what a customer success manager is. Well, guess what? You can go on LinkedIn and find somebody who is that job and say, hey, I'm going to be graduating soon, and I'm thinking I might like your job. What is that like, and how did you get into it? You know, business development representatives, customer success managers, as entry-level jobs, they don't require any past experience a lot of the time or any certain degree, and it's a great way of just getting your foot in the door into a company. And then once you're in there, I've hired the past student body president of the University of Waterloo was my first customer success manager, and now he's my enterprise sales rep. I had a woman from the insurance industry come over and be a customer success manager, and now she's a product manager. Like, it's just an entry door to then go into roles that, you know, requires some expertise at the company and requires some knowledge. So there's just so many ways of getting in, and those meetups even are a great way of being like, oh, you're a customer success manager? I just met you at this monthly meetup. Tell me more.
I think one piece of advice that I would give is get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think when I was in university, I had my group of friends. I knew they were all going to take the same courses as me. We'd all see each other every day. And I was very comfortable in that bubble that was UW, and that was my class, that was my degree. But I think when you get into the real world, you're not gonna have that safety net anymore. So getting comfortable being uncomfortable is super important to learn, to stretch yourself, to get to where you wanna be. I feel like taking risks, putting yourself out there, like a lot of people said on the panel, is also really important. One thing I wish I did when I was in school was joining student groups on campus. I was really just like focused on my work, focused on my friend groups, but I think it's a really great way to network and meet a lot of people that are in the same mindset as you are. That is like the one opportunity that you're gonna have to be surrounded by people who are 17 to 22, who are all passionate about learning. When you get into the real world, the demographics are gonna kind of be all over the place. So really taking advantage of that opportunity. If people want to start startups, like get in on that. Why not? Learn new skills, try new things, because you really have that opportunity to kind of make mistakes and learn from it with no risks.
Kind of what I wanted to echo on was, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think is the most important thing that you can do. And as daunting as it sounds, really honing in on what you feel most vulnerable in, and challenging yourself, because that's really the only way you're gonna grow. So be it being really tenacious about different opportunities that are available to you around you, getting involved with different extracurriculars, different opportunities, reaching out to people whose jobs that you'd want on LinkedIn, asking them what their story is. Really being in the position that we're in, we're so lucky and so fortunate to have those resources and energy invested in us that, you'd be a fool to not take advantage of it and really capitalize on it. So just do yourself a favor and really put yourself out there.
Awesome.
Just one thing to add. I would also look at To your point about reaching out to people in roles that are interesting to you, also do that with companies and potentially hiring managers. Whether or not I have an open role, I often have students or people who are interested in joining Vidyard just cold outreach me on LinkedIn, and I'll always have a conversation, even have a coffee with them. And maybe we aren't planning on hiring someone for the next several months, but I have a network of my peers at different companies across this region too, so I could, open the door for you if I thought, you'd be a good candidate for something. So not just your own peers, but look to hiring managers or people who are in roles today that interest you, because that can drive a lot in terms of the informational chats.
Awesome, thank you. So we've talked quite a bit about what it's like to kind of be a student and consider technology and apply for those things. But what about once you actually get there and you're working in the tech company? What are some challenges that you've kind of faced in terms of getting comfortable or getting accustomed to your position in leadership, let's say? I know we touched on imposter syndrome, but something about kind of overcoming that once you get there?
Ask questions, ask so many questions. Don't worry if it's a stupid question, because it at least shows that you're trying to learn. And don't be afraid to share your ideas. Typically we'll bring someone on board because they have interesting ideas or interesting experiences that we want you to share. I've often been in meetings where someone doesn't share something and then afterwards will be like, oh, I had this idea, I just didn't speak up, and then you have to kind of go back and share it later. But ask questions and be sure to speak up as well.
I guess this really ties into the last set of answers and questions as well, in the sense of it's kind of a similar situation that you're in again. You're in a vulnerable spot, you're in a new role, you might not know what the fuck you're doing, pardon my language, but I've recently, like when I first started at Shopify, it was really overwhelming. There was just a lot to take in at one time. It was my first full sales cycle job. I had to figure out how to sell it into really large businesses and gather their attention to basically shift the entire infrastructure of what their business model is to e-commerce. How do I do that? How do they trust a 20-something-year-old with the future of their business? So that's pretty daunting. And really overcoming that, it's an ongoing process. There's no one size fits all, but being curious, really getting comfortable with the fact that you're always going to be uncomfortable, because otherwise, things just aren't exciting. And it's really important in that same realm to be tenacious, to reach out to people that are, your peers, your superiors, learn from everyone and everything around you. Again, you're in a situation, in an environment where there's so many resources being invested into your success, where, it's your job to really, take advantage of that, because otherwise, what's the point of them being there?
I will say one of the biggest challenges for me personally was imposter syndrome. Like, I had never experienced that in my life, or maybe I just didn't know what it was. And when I got to Google, I remember like the first 6 months, I was like, what am I doing? Like, why did they hire me? Someone is going to tap on my shoulder and be like, thanks for coming out. Like, it is time for you to go home. We don't need your services anymore. But it really just took me some time talking to other like females in the company to be like, this is normal. Like, this is totally fine. And having those conversations, meeting up with engineers, meeting up with people on the marketing side, the sales side, and just kind of realizing that that was kind of like the underlying theme, that people had experienced that before, kind of made me feel better about it. And then also just talking to them about things that they did to overcome it. I think it's always sometimes going to be in the back of your mind, right? Like for me, I'm the first of 3 kids. Like, this was a big deal to get a job at Google. Like, my poor sister's coming after me. They have big shoes to follow. But for me, it was just like that pressure of trying to really perform and do well. And this is my second job out of university, right? So I think just owning that for a little bit and being okay with that uncertainty is totally fine. And then just trying to remind yourself, like, it is uncomfortable at this point, it will get better, it does get easier, and then you can share that knowledge for people coming after you, which I think is a really important piece, right? Always being able to give back, always being able to mentor like the next generation or the next woman who comes into your organization to make them feel a little bit better than you did when you came
in. So one of the best pieces of advice that I actually learned in a leadership course, I think about 18 months ago, and it's particular to women, it's for everybody, particularly for women though, is to be yourself, your authentic self. And I know that sounds kind of cliche to say like, be yourself, go to work and just, hey, what's up? But I really truly mean that. That was, for me in my career in financial services, because it's a bank, is probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do. Because I'm a little quirky, right? Like, I don't know, I'm kind of a weirdo, and I like being a weirdo. And I don't come to work and say weird things, but like, you definitely want to like be able to be who you are and utilize that to your advantage, right? So when I say I'm a weirdo, I'm a theater nerd is really what I mean. It's like I love theater, I do theater on the side, and when I get into a banking environment, I'm like, oh yeah, I do plays, and they're like, what? Like, who is this person? But so equally, right? So I get some of that in the room, but I also equally get the other side of the room, right? Where people are like, oh, that's really cool. Like you get up on stage and you say things, that's awesome. Like, why do you like that? And what do you enjoy about that? And I also, when I think about it, I think I bring things from my life, like from theater as an example, into my job, right? So there's something about preparedness that's really important. Now I know sometimes as women we can tend to be over-prepared. So I'm not trying to encourage you to be crazy, crazy prepared. What I'm saying is prepare yourself to where you feel comfortable that you can walk in and you can know your stuff and you can be yourself and you can be authentic. And as long as I think you do that and you bring yourself to work every day, you're gonna help get over some of those hurdles that women tend to face every day at work.
Okay, so I'll say something a little bit different. So when you are in tech and you want to grow your career in tech, it's really important to stay hungry. Don't do tech for tech's sake. Go out and figure out, tech has so much potential. What are the big issues? What are the big problems? Things that are broken, things that can fundamentally be enhanced that tech can actually enable, and then go in and get skills that are relevant to that. But then, having said that, you also have to know that there's a lot of new and shiny objects in tech. And you have to really learn to sort of not run after every new thing that comes around. Because if you do that, you're going to spread your attention really thin, and you're always going to be on the shallow end. There's always a new programming language, there's always a new tech stack, there's always any of those things. So you have to start building some of the very fundamentals. Those will be applicable everywhere. Learn how to build large, scalable, software secure systems. That's something that's going to help you grow. And the final thing is, and this is in the world of tech, there are very few women. It is dominated by men. And so it becomes really hard to be heard as a woman. So you have to understand that, in order to sort of make it in this world, you have to be assertive, you have to be confident, and like you said, you have to be yourself. But really everybody, whether you're a man or a woman, you really always have two choices, right? There are people who are gonna say things to you, and you have a choice of letting that sort of weigh you down, or you have a choice of taking that as a challenge and saying, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that this is not who I am, and that being a woman, I can still make it. Everybody has that choice. You probably want to choose the latter.
So for me, kind of throughout my career so far in tech, something that's been really important to me, and I think has really helped me, is balancing self-awareness, really understanding where my shortcomings are, where my areas of opportunity, where I can grow into, as well as, what are my strongholds? Where should I be giving myself more credit? And kind of keeping that in my mind at all times. So feeling confident that, maybe I don't know everything, but feeling confident that I can figure it out, that I can learn. And giving myself that credit to, sit on that, to feel, if I walk into a room and I'm the youngest person or the only woman or the person that's has the least expertise at a certain topic, giving myself the credit to say, okay, no, I can learn this and I can tackle it and I can keep moving forward. But then also keeping that hungry mindset, being authentic, looking for opportunities, still always growing and changing and improving, but having that balance has been really important for me.
Awesome. Some really useful comments there. So I really want to save some time to turn it over to the audience and let you guys ask some of your questions. But before I do that, I want to just ask open question for the entire panel. What piece of advice or what do you believe that women need to see or hear in order to connect with tech or to consider a career in tech where they otherwise may not have?
Maybe just to kick it off, for me, I think it's that you need to understand that the industry is broad and that the industry is changing and it's always moving. So opportunities that you may not feel exist now, give it 6 months, 1 month, it can be there for you very soon. So understanding that it's not the stereotype, it's not just the boys club, it's not just closed doors, it's more than that. There's room for it to be more than that. You can be part of it being more than that. So just really understand that there's diverse opportunities.
So if you're considering going into tech, you should probably look at two sides of it. One is the opportunities. So look at how the world is changing, look at how much tech can enable, how many problems it can solve, what it can change, and then decide, do you want to be a part of that change? Do you want to be someone who's sitting on the sidelines and watching it change, or do you want to be an active part of it? So that's the opportunity part. The other part of it is, what if I'm not a part of that ecosystem? So like I just said before, there are very few women in the industry, and one of the things we're doing is not only are there very few women in technology, there are also very few women in business leadership. So what we're really doing here is we're creating really high towers of, say, artificial intelligent technology, and we're giving that technology the perspective of only half the world. And that's really scary, right? So if you want to change that, or if you don't want that to happen, then you have to actually actively speak up, actively step into this world and make sure that the technology that we're building is equally represented by both sides.
So I'm going to sort of build on that a little bit. I would say, what makes you get out of bed in the morning, right? Like, passion, I don't know, I don't love the word passion, truthfully, because it's like, to me, I can be really passionate about something and then I do it so much that I think I almost start to hate it. So like, I don't think passion is the right word, but like, what is gonna make you wanna get out of bed every morning and do this over and over and over again? So to your point, if tech is really something that interests you, if it's something that you're like, I do wanna change the world, and as a woman, I wanna be there, I wanna be that 50% voice sort of thing, and then men being the other half of it, so that we can produce products and services for this world that are going to change the way we do things and impact people's lives. If that's really important to you, then that's a great reason to get out of bed, but it has to be something that you want to do, because obviously once you start your career, you can always change paths, but you want to make sure that you're understanding what you're getting into, what's ahead of you, and all the opportunities that are in front of you. And even as you just said, there's opportunities coming all the time. So even if you just get involved and dip your toe in the water and see what you like and see what's there, I think that's great. The other piece of advice I would say is, once you do get into tech, if that's where you actually want to be, as women, I think it's really important that we support each other. And I'll be honest with you, I was never really big on that for a while, because I was like, well, I think we have to make sure that we're all supporting each other. But I actually do see it every day in my work environment where, if women aren't supporting each other and calling out each other's voices, we will get drowned out if we're not careful, right? So if you see that happening to another woman, speak up and say something. Hey, I wanted to echo what so-and-so just said, and here's the perspective on that, right? Always be there backing each other up. That's just sort of one last piece I wanted to say.
Yeah, so echoing very similar points. So at my company, we actually help people be more self-aware. It's something you can do right now. You can go online to plum.io and you can take your own Plum profile and find out what your top 3 talents are. So mine are persuasion. So, setting a vision and convincing people to follow it, check for CEO. Innovation. So I run a tech company. Again, I knew nothing about the tech space, but I like, creating something from nothing, check. And decision making. I like being the boss, check. If I had taken my own assessment before, leaving university or when I was teaching English in China, it could have spelled out where I was going before I even knew it. I, dread thinking what happens if I didn't have my first boss see this potential in me and trust me and get out of my way and believe that I could do anything. Where would I be right now? And so, part of passion is just being self-aware of what is that thing that gives you a sense of fulfillment at the end of the day, because each one has a different motivation. Tech is just a way of you getting an opportunity that if you love building relationships with people, well, you could go and work as a bank teller and that would be great, or you can go and work in the tech space and build relationships there. Everybody can, utilize their talents, this is just one of the ways of doing it. And it's a pretty great space because the opportunity to learn and grow is just so big, and a chance to have an impact on the future is so big. You can be more than a cog in a wheel when you enter the tech space. You can truly develop something that didn't exist before, and that can be really exciting. And the other part about supporting women, I think, is really important. Yesterday morning, I spoke to a group of women that had gathered for International Women's Day, 200 of them. And somebody sitting on the panel, kind of said they don't really like women's events. They like people to just be, evaluated based on merit. But in the tech space, because so much happens based on who you know, a lot of the times guys will recommend their guy friends for opportunities, and they will think about, what is the logo that attracts them the most, even though they're products for women. And so you need to be supporting women because you may know of an opportunity and that they don't, and you may have a perspective that other people don't. And so we have to be intentional. At my company, we have 50% women, and we have to be intentional about it, because if you don't, you could very easily be like, oh crap, we have no women in this department. We have no voice. And programs like Fierce Founders, which supports women-led businesses here at Communitech. When I was in the accelerator program 6 years ago, out of 11 companies, there were 2 women CEOs, and then out of 60 people, there were 3 women. Now, because of Fierce Founders supporting women-led businesses, when they ask for people to speak on a panel, I'm not the token woman CEO anymore. There's, hundreds of women CEOs in Waterloo now because of that program. So those concentrated programs that support women and events that support women and women supporting women, it's still necessary. One day it may not be, but right now it is. And so don't shy away from those, lean into them and take advantage of them.
2 pieces of advice that I kind of wish I had was, 1, shoot your shot. Like, you're gonna miss all the shots you don't take, so just try. If it doesn't work out, hey, you learned something along that journey, so just try. I never thought I'd be in tech, but I just tried it, and now I'm really loving this space, and I've learned a lot, and I've been able to be connected to a lot of really amazing and smart people. And the second thing is, not to be afraid of failure. I think a lot of you at really good colleges and universities, you've made it, congratulations to you, but don't be afraid to fail along the way. I think we have this really great notion of successes and failures all the time in life, but I think you need to reframe your mindset. It's not always about failures, but about the journey and learning along that journey. If something didn't work out, if you're looking at it in a negative light, you might not learn as much through that process. If you really try and reframe your mindset and think about it as an obstacle or something that you learned along that way, I think that could really help you to have continued life lessons, continued successes, and continued improvement, because that's kind of what it's all about.
I would say tech is innovating and changing at crazy rates. So if you're looking for something that's comfortable or secure, tech might not be for you. Because you're going through challenges constantly, and I enjoy that. I thrive through that. So if you're feeling that way, it's probably a good move for you. And once you're in, and to your point earlier, you can't necessarily plan out everything. You kind of have to take opportunities as they come. Look for places where you might add value. So I was a customer success manager. I had no idea what that job was before I took a call with Vidyard. That was my first job at Vidyard. And I'm like, that sounds great. I like doing that. I like talking to people and managing relationships. And I knew I could add value, so I took that opportunity, which opened another door. I moved to management from there. So don't necessarily chase titles, chase experiences, and look for areas where you can add value.
Adding on to that, I think, right now, especially, with social media and stuff, tech is a really sexy topic. There's lots of hustle porn on Instagram and, working hard, outside of 9 to 5, all of that. And so naturally, yeah, that might make tech as an industry a really attractive industry to work in. But, it's not glitzy and glamorous at all. It's a lot of grit and hard work. It's the exact opposite of glamour. So I think, if you are considering a field in tech, doing it purposefully and intentionally right from the get-go, and really understanding what it is that you're looking out of from it before actually actioning on any item. And I think that's applicable to any sort of career or decision that you make, because otherwise it's a wasted time if it's not full of intention. And echoing on the point of being a woman in tech, it's really hard, and that's the reality of it. I mean, there's a lot, we've come a long way, yes, but we still have a lot to work on. There are gonna be multiple times where you might be the only woman in the room, where you might be the only female leader in the room, or even the clients that you might be speaking with, you're presenting to a group of men and you might be the youngest. There will be a lot of factors working against you most of the time, but at the end of the day, you really just have to trust yourself. And again, having work that makes you feel purposeful and you're doing it with intention, because that authenticity really shines through all the other factors that might be working against you. And again, it's that factor of being comfortable being uncomfortable, because the only way you're going to grow is if you're putting yourself in vulnerable situations.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Very valuable insights. And now I'd like to open up the floor to questions. Perfect.
Hi, thank you guys for coming out. This has been really useful. I had a question echoing kind of what Andrew said about when you have a female coworker who's being drowned out, to be like, hey, here's your point again, and here's my perspective. What about when you're the only woman in the room? So I've been in situations like that quite often the past couple months, where I'm a designer, and designers are already like at the end of the bottom of the business, where they want things to look pretty and they don't really care about usability sometimes. So it's really difficult for me to be like, hey, you're paying me to do this research, and here's the research, and this is what I think we should do from my perspective as a designer, and here's facts 1, 2, 3, and I still get like drowned out by my like male coworkers, or like, oh, but like this is what other companies are doing, and this is what I think we should be doing. And I think it's starting to get really frustrating for me, where now I'm looking for other opportunities and I really want to quit, because I just like, it gets so frustrating and I get angry, and then they see that anger and they don't take me seriously.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Thanks for sharing. No, that's a really good perspective. So, I mean, I'd love to say I have the answer to that, but I'll give you sort of my perspective. I think part of it is you do need to self-advocate, right? So if you don't have other women in the room, there's a few things you can do. One, focus on building good relationships with the people that are in the room. So I mean, I'm sure most of us in this room hopefully are familiar with the He for She initiative, right? So that is primarily where men focus on uplifting women. And so that's a great example of where you can have men that actually advocate for women and do it vocally. So I actually have a fantastic designer on my team who is just that. We have a lot of students that work with us at FactoryU, of course, right? In co-op, and what we notice is that most of my full-time team are men. And try as I might to hire women, it's very difficult to do in this industry. And so he always is advocating for their voices, right? So I would say, one, find allies that you can get to advocate for you, and advocate for yourself if you need to. There's often many different ways you can handle how you advocate. I think for some people, it depends on who they are. It could be assertiveness. It could be perspective, explaining where you're coming from. So that's one piece of advice. I think the other piece, and you specifically related to design as a practice is really difficult. And I think in a really good way, right? Because it's really an up and coming, especially in this area, from my perspective, a really up and coming practice. And so that advocating for the customer, which is often what you're doing, and advocating for the right journey can often be really, really challenging when you're up against product and engineering and wanting to get the product out and wanting to get it out to customers, and you really want to stand up for the value. So I would say on that note, I would encourage you to try to become a part of the design community of practices that you can see in the Waterloo region to help bring up topics of discussion like that. How can I make sure that my voice as a designer is heard? How can I make sure that I'm being, that I'm advocating for myself and even for the customer? That's my advice. Anyone else?
I
think that's great advice. Just to add to, you mentioned, it can be really frustrating, and I totally empathize with that, because I'm very often, in that position. I had just a shitty day on Tuesday where I kept getting interrupted, and then over lunch I was just ready to explode. So took a nice walk around the building, took some time to myself, and kind of did what I had to do to get back in the mind space to be really effective in my next meeting again. So I think it's really important to also, set boundaries for yourself and take care of yourself and do what you need to do to not get burnt out. One of the reasons that we see so few women in tech is because people, push themselves and are up against some of these adversities, and then they get exhausted and they don't make it up to those higher tiers, those leadership positions, because you just say enough is enough. So I think it's important to protect, kind of yourself, and thinking about how can you keep your cup full, if you will, to be able to be effective going forward.
I think this is important for anybody in their career, regardless of gender, but definitely something that I think women need to hear a lot is it's incredibly important to manage up. And I don't know in your case specifically if you've had a chance to talk to the person that all those designers report to, but a lot of people that are in management positions were never trained to be managers. They got there because they were an individual contributor, and so they don't actually know how to do their job. But their job is to make sure that the people that report to them don't feel the way that you're feeling. It is their job to make sure that your voice is being considered, and that if there's a reason why it's not being heard, that something changes. And so, we need to hold people, leaders, accountable to being better at managing people. And a lot of the times, that means that the people that are unhappy with their leadership need to tell them in a way that's very constructive of, this is how you can support me. I will think you are the best boss in the world if you did X. And it's amazing. They'll go, I didn't even realize that was happening. Or I've been trying to make you happy this way, and wait a second, if I did this, you'd actually be happy? Like, a lot of the times that feedback isn't making it to them. They don't know how to do their job because they're not being told what they need to do to keep their people happy. And so that managing up is something like everybody that I know in their career has had to be told. They tell me, oh, my boss is horrible, X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, and have you told them what they could do to help you? And the answer is often no. But seriously, it's your job to make your manager a better people manager. And that's part of the equation. And if you've told them and you've coached them and they still can't follow through, then that's a really big problem. That's either you go to the manager that manages them, or you say, I need to go someplace where I'm respected and that I'm going to be managed by somebody that actually knows how to manage people.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions? Perfect.
Hi, so I go to the University of Waterloo, and I don't come from a technical background, but I work with a lot of people that do, and they are really good at their job, and it's in complicated fields like AI and deep learning. So I was wondering how you kind of compensate for that, how you understand the technical stuff when you don't, and if there are any resources that you could point us to for that.
So I have a French and business background from U Waterloo, like completely random to what I do now. Truthfully, my manager studied French, so I feel like that kind of gave me some in the interview process. But the first, like I mentioned, the first 6 months, I had no idea. I didn't even know YouTube was part of Google when I was interviewing at Google. So when I say I had no knowledge, I had no knowledge. But one thing that I really tried to do when I started was leveraging the network of really smart people. So I met with engineers on a weekly basis to really understand when I'm going out to meet with students on campus, give me the jargon. What do I say to these students? Because I don't have a tech background. What am I gonna know that's gonna be helpful for them so that they can trust me having these conversations, to know that I'm knowledgeable, but I'm also helping them feel comfortable to come into the business, right? Leaning on that expertise that you already have within the company, or even a network of peers that you have, I think is really helpful, especially if you come from a non-tech background or a non-traditional background to tech. And also just having that like hunger and appetite to continuously learn and improve. There's always like articles or things that you can find online or internal resources in your company. And I just spent like those first 6 months telling myself, it is okay, you are learning. Just continue learning. Every day will get easier. And now, like 2.5 years later, like I would have never imagined being on a panel giving advice to other people. So the sky's the limit, really. It's as much as you're gonna push yourself to continue to learn and have that appetite to be hungry to learn more information.
Just last night in my peer-to-peer CEO group, this resource was mentioned, and I haven't checked it out yet, but it's kind of the foundation. So if you're interested in AI at all, the founder of Coursera, so Coursera is a way to learn online, the founder of Coursera did an introductory course on artificial intelligence, and apparently it's like the 101. It's the most important to watch. And then I thought it would come to me, but there's a second one kind of on deep learning that's really important, but I can't remember any of the details off, but I wrote it down, so I apologize. But you know, I worked with a lot of developers and graphic designers early on when I was building the first business, and what I found is that it's almost like they have their own language. They have their own set of criteria, their own rule of ethics of what's important to them and how things work. So if it's developers, it's like you have to understand what sprint planning is and that the whole world operates, you know, Monday to Friday is not a thing. Sprints is a thing. And just understanding that world of how they think. Graphic designers, you do not edit their work. No one else can edit their work. It is their intellectual property. And so like they control from end to end. And like, it's really amazing that if you don't know their rules, you can easily offend them. You can easily be talking two languages and not see eye to eye. And so for me, I learned just by truly having those conversations and saying, explain it to me. You know, I don't know. Tell me how to speak your language. And it really was trying to conform to their reality and see the world through their eyes, because then I could communicate in a way that could get them to see things the way I needed them to. But it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of being humble and just, you know, learning by doing and not being scared that I would look like an idiot.
So if I'm come from a tech background, so if I give you this advice, it probably wouldn't be helpful. But if I look at it in the other respects, so I'm very technical, but I'm not a medical person, and that's kind of the field that I've gone into. So I talk to doctors and all these healthcare policy people, and I've had to have a big learning curve in that respect. And they're talking about all these muscles and body parts and all these things in uber detail. So all the advice that they've given here, like I've gone through that as well, looking at sort of one-on-one videos and stuff. But one of the other things is be confident and know that what you should be asking them is, well, they should know that you're not there to do their job, like the technical part, and that's not what you need to do. In order to do your job, you need to understand what it is that they're trying to do, which means that they should try and break it down for you in terms of, can you explain this to a lay person? So some of the most experienced healthcare people that I talk to, they explain things to me in lay terms. They break it down for me, and so I'm totally able to understand what it is they're trying to do, because they look at an alternative way. Now, when I interview software engineers as well, one of the things I ask them to do is they'll talk to me about some really technical concept, and I'll act like I don't really know what the heck they're talking about, and I'll ask them to explain it to me on the board with diagrams and everything, because that's my way of testing them to say, because I tell them smart people are not just people who can do stuff. Smart people are people who can explain their concepts to a wide variety of people. So be confident in sort of saying, you know, well, I can't do my job well if you're not able to communicate that to me.
Awesome. Saheba, did you have something you wanted to add? I saw you. Okay. Just take it to her. There you are.
Just to backtrack, sorry, are you working on a day-to-day basis with people that are more technical, or are you looking to learn a bit more? Or?
I work on a day-to-day basis. I work part-time at one of the labs at the school.
Okay.
And they're building like complex systems. So.
Gotcha. I think like, obviously coming from a non-technical background and trying to really wrap your head around everything can be a little overwhelming at times. I think, kind of echoing back on what was mentioned earlier, really just immersing yourself in everything that is in front of you and, being curious about what people are working on, asking them, what are you working on, how you can apply it in your day-to-day, and what was your role in what you're doing?
I'm the product manager.
Product manager?
Research manager.
Gotcha. So speaking from personal experience, I think, those with arts backgrounds can agree with this, but being in tech and having an arts background translates really well, especially when you're dealing with, customers or merchants or the outside facing part of the organization. So really flex that muscle and work it to your advantage. I mean, from personal experience, what I found is every single deal that I'm on really is like writing an essay. I have my thesis, which is proving why what I'm selling them is going to be a good fit for their business model. And, every point that I have to back it up, my supporting arguments would be, really honing in on what certain pain points might be. So really it's just a translation of the landscape. And, to be more specific on the different individual resources that are available to you, there's platforms like Feedly, Owler, reaching out to people in your network on LinkedIn, and really just being as curious as possible, trying to absorb as much information as you can.
Awesome. So I think we have time for a couple more questions before we move on to networking. Awesome. You had your hand up first.
Thank you. Actually, I'm not a student, but I'm a stay-at-home mom for now. My question is for future, stay-at-home moms. How can I start again? It's very scary.
So a bunch of employers have realized that stay-at-home moms are an untapped funnel of talent. And so, you have a lot of experience and you need to come back into the workforce and you're open to new opportunities and you're hungry to prove yourself and you're going to be dedicated and work hard. You bring experience. Those are all huge assets. There are a bunch of employers that specifically focus on, we know that we need more women in tech, and we know that that's a great place to convince people to make a change in their career. And so we see it as an asset, and we're not the only ones. So, take it as a differentiator. Take it as a way of promoting yourself. You can put it right on your cover letter. I'm re-entering the workforce, and I'm super excited to get into tech, and I'm willing to, come in and prove myself and work my way up. You don't have to be hide from it. This industry, we're having more of a hard time trying to convince people to take a risk on us. We're not turning people away. We're trying to get more and more people to apply. So be confident. A couple of resources. So Tech Jams just happened last week. It happens twice a year. It's a huge career fair that Communitech puts on. It's twice a year here in town, but I think they're now doing Mississauga. No? So twice a year here. So they just had theirs now. My guess would be October would probably be the next one. Yes, I'm getting head nods. It was insane. It was jam-packed. There were like 1,100 people that applied, that came through, but there were 60 companies. And so you can, again, I would go on the Work in Tech website and look at who's posting, reach out to hiring managers. It's a hook. Use it as like contacting hiring managers saying, I'm getting back into the workforce and I'm trying to figure out what company is a good fit for me, and make them sell you on their business and tell you about the opportunities. And then I seriously, you can go onto meetup.com and just look up tech meetups. And they're not for people that have technical skills. They're for people that are in the tech community and want to have more peers in the tech community. So you can show up to, any of these, that just Google them because the names keep changing and there's tons of them. And then there's a bunch of employers in town that'll get together and throw an event. And so they'll do beers in tech or There are so many community events because they are trying to get their brand out there. Vidyard is always out there, doing community events, and they're doing it because they're trying to recruit you. Yes, they're giving back to the community, but they're also trying to get the brand exposure. So show up to those events and be like, I'm super excited that you're doing music in the park with a charity. Like, I want to talk to people that work there. So there's so many events. It's really on you to not hold back.
Awesome. Other questions? I think I saw a hand.
Hi, I'm from Conestoga College and I'm going to graduate soon. That is next month. So, I'm applying for jobs since few weeks, and in spite of applying, I can see that the application is viewed, but they are not rewarding. So it's quite demotivating. So how to tackle the situation? Because the thing is, although I have experience previously in development, but still I'm not getting any rewards. So how to tackle the situation is my question.
Yeah, and to echo or to repeat what my role is business development, so cold calling and cold outreaching, and you almost have to do that in your career these days. When we open up a role, we tend to get quite a few resumes, so it takes time to go through all of them, and potentially we find a good candidate in the first 50, and then we don't get a chance to go through everyone. We want to every time. But the individuals that stand out, and I'm managing a sales role, so it might be a little different, but the individuals that stand out to me reach out to me cold, not just to HR, but to the hiring manager of that role. Just reach out to them on LinkedIn. If you can find their information, cold call them, cold email them. Just wanted to make sure you saw my resume. This is something that I think I could bring a lot of value to within the organization. I would suggest that for all of you when you're seeking a job, is to actually put your name in front of that person and not just be one of many applicants that are applying to the job.
So one of the common things that I've heard is that women usually only apply to jobs when they meet pretty much 100% of the qualifications, whereas for men it's something like 30 or to 40 or something like that, right? So they always take way more risk and they say, okay, I can do the rest, I'll figure it out. So one of the strategies I always used, honestly, was just throw yourself out there at as many opportunities as you can find, and you will find something that sticks and works for you. If you're, I don't know what your approach is, but if you're sort of trying to find that perfect job, right when you're out of school, I would say, maybe not the best strategy. Try and look at a big spread of jobs, throw yourself out there, get your resume out there, start meeting with people, and then you hopefully will land somewhere that's really great for you. But definitely don't try to get every single thing on that job description.
Just adding on to that point too, I think, even when job prospecting, a really good tip is really to apply to jobs that you're that you're underqualified for, and leveraging as a point of, here's what I'm looking to learn, and really effectively communicating that as well. Because, if you have 100% of what the ask is and you're bringing that to the table, well, what's in it for you? And I think that's a really important thing that gets overlooked, and really understanding what you're looking to get out of whatever role you're applying to, outside of just having the job, but what sort of skill sets are you looking to grow in your individual portfolio, and also, being top of mind of wherever you're applying. Even if it doesn't work out at that point in time, still keeping that person in your network, because you literally never know how they'll come across in your path later down the line, because everyone in this town, or industry rather in particular, like, everyone ends up knowing each other, everyone is connected somehow, so it'll eventually come back to you in some way, shape, or form.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has another. Awesome.
If there's ever been a time where you've faced a challenge, or you're banging your head against a wall, or maybe you just screwed up, how do you kind of get out of that cycle and come back from it effectively?
So basically finding yourself in a rut. Yeah. I think that it really comes down to that self-awareness portion, and understanding why you are where you are, and really having purpose and intent behind what you're doing. There's gonna be things that are thrown at you all the time. There's gonna be challenges that you face, and it's gonna be really frustrating and hard to get over. But you have to understand at the end of the day why you're doing what you're doing, and really trust yourself, because it's not the end of the world if something doesn't work out the way you've planned. It's just another thing for you to get over, and it's important to look at those challenges as more of an opportunity, because it's only going to make you stronger and grow even further.
There's this concept in a lot of tech companies, like fail fast. So it's sort of like try new things all the time and don't be afraid to fail. But if you find yourself in those types of situations, like just owning it, says a lot if someone just owns it and sort of asks for help and reflects on what they can learn from that.
I was gonna say something not as insightful, but cry. Sometimes you just need to let it out and then realize it's going to be okay. So yeah, start there. And then I think sometimes taking a step back, when you're in the weeds in something and you've wrapped your head around it, you can't get it, you're so super confused and don't know what to do. Taking a step back, trying to do something else, and then being fresh, coming with a new approach, sometimes is really helpful too. And also, I think bouncing an idea off of someone that is not in that industry to see how they would approach that problem might get you brainstorming on different ways to approach it, and might give you different avenues that you can kind of go down to see how they pan out as well.
The only thing I was going to add to that, for me, when I'm in a rut, so outside of just putting it away and coming back to it, because I 100% agree with that and works for me all the time, is read. Read articles on the things that are difficult for you. Read articles on the things that interest you. Sort of give your brain some food, right? Because I find when I do that, it gives me different perspective. So I always have this folder on my browser that literally is because I get so many different things thrown at me in a day, and I'm I just save them, and I literally catalog them, and then I go through and I'll just allocate time to reading. For me, it's a bit of a break, it's a bit of a reflection time, and then I go and I pull out what are the notes, what are the nuggets there that I want to use based on whatever it is that I'm reading. That's always really helpful for me.
So I read a lot, so I definitely do that. You just have to be careful. You don't want to read the same thing that you're stuck with. You really want to sort of do something different. The other thing that I do is I go for a walk. The thing is, so I'm very much in tech, and I feel like when I'm too much surrounded by that, it just makes me get into a hole sometimes. So what I do is I do anything that's non-tech. I'll leave my phone somewhere else, go for a walk, do whatever. Because you have to, your body, you are human, right? And so you have to respect your body and know that it needs to go through its own process. And every time you run into this, take note of what it is. Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the people. What is it that's causing that for you, so that next time you're a little bit more prepared? And sometimes next time you hit that point, you know that you just have to let your body and your mind go through that process. And in 1 day or 2 days, you're going to be fine.
I think for me also, it's getting that perspective. So understanding, okay, you screwed up or you fell on your face or whatever it is. That's today in this position with these people in this one aspect of your life. It's not everything. It's not all encompassing. So sometimes it's just literally thinking, okay, work is just work. I can, there's more to me than work. You're not getting just wrapped up in that. And then, when you do have setbacks, and to me, the worst case is when those setbacks inhibit my bravery for taking on the next thing. So it's oh, last time I did this and it was hard and it hurt. Why should I put myself out there again? And then when I'm in that case, I always try to think, okay, what's the worst case? Worst case is I'd be where I was, where I screwed up and maybe had to learn something that maybe was difficult. And then what's the best case? It goes awesome. I really learned, I thrive, and I'm super excited and proud of myself. So kind of just, taking that pause and reevaluating, getting that perspective that you need. But then respecting that process might be different. Sometimes it does involve a big cry first, and that's okay. And then you just kind of, keep going from there.
Awesome. So I think we'll wrap up our panel portion of the evening there. I think our panelists hopefully have some time to stay back for a little bit of networking. If we're lucky, you'll hopefully get a chance to talk to some of them. But first, can we please give them a huge round of applause? So articulate. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It really means a lot. And thank you also to our campus ambassadors once again. I think they deserve a round of applause for putting tonight on, because we wouldn't be here without them. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. There's some food left, I believe, and some water over there if you'd like to help yourself.